Why did you get fired from your job?
I was 19 and working as a janitor at a large self-storage facility, where most days were filled with sweeping and mopping endless hallways of flickering fluorescent light. And when someone went delinquent on their bill, after a 3-month grace period, I would be instructed to empty their unit and dump everything in the trash outside. Once or twice it was a person who died, but otherwise it was pretty common to see a room full of absolute junk that someone got tired of paying for. Banged up furniture, garbage bags of ratty clothing, stacks of old magazines. It was usually pretty hoarder-friendly stuff, and not that I'd want any of it, but the policy was, I had to throw it into the dumpster outside no matter what it was. One day I get notified to empty out a unit, so I grab the bin, cut the lock, fling open the gate. The room is full of huge cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling. I open one up out of curiosity, and it's full of brand new, unopened Gundam models. The entire room is full of them, dozens of boxes with dozens of models in each, and I'm talking the $50, $100 ones I saw for sale at my local comics shop every week. The manager would check up on me once or twice a day, and that morning he walked up and I showed him all of the brand new merchandise and said there has to be a better system than trashing all of this. He said rules are rules, something about insurance I didn't understand, and told me to throw them all away. So I went and I backed up one of the complimentary U-Haul style box trucks, picked a few models out for myself, and loaded it up the truck with the rest of it. On my lunch break, I drove over to the Children's Resource Center that I'd volunteered at during high school. It's a place where any child, but usually poorer ones, would go after school for arts and crafts and activities to keep them busy until their parents got home. The people at the drop-off dock were so grateful. Before I even left, they were handing them out to some extremely excited kids. Drove back to the self-storage place with enough time to eat a sandwich and smoke a cigarette before clocking back in. But that's not why I got fired. I got fired because the manager came to check on me that afternoon, and after a while of looking around, found me sitting cross-legged on the floor of the janitor closet with model parts spread all around me, happily assembling a sweet translucent Zaku model. I was so entranced I didn't even hear him come in. I just hear this long, drawn-out, exasperated sigh. I look up and he just says keys, and that was that. I spent the rest of the week assembling Zakus and Valkyries and lying to my parents about getting replaced with a Roomba. Story 2, I was denied a raise by HR after consistently working 60 to 70 hours weeks, and my VP, who had supported and requested the raise for me, told me to stop putting in the extra time, work my 40, and spend that extra time applying to new jobs. Within a month, a meeting was called to mutually part ways, because my work wasn't getting done. I was gratified to learn that they had to hire 2 people to do my job after I left. Story 3, I got fired once for putting in my 2-week notice. The only other time I've gotten fired was working for a trade company during the first week. I was a supervisor, and there was a second supervisor on site. I got a call that my wife had been rushed to the hospital, which was literally less than a mile away. I asked the other supervisor if I could go to attend to her, and he said, "Sure, no problem. I've got things here. Go." I returned to the job site later to find the boss there, and he let me go on the spot for leaving the team without a supervisor. He knew what had happened, and still fired me. I won't lie, that one kind of pissed me off. Story 4. This isn't why I got fired, but this is why I didn't get a job. I was 16 and looking to work at a Dairy Queen as my first job. My mom drove me to the interview and I was super nervous. She looked me in the eye and said, "Just be honest and be yourself, and you'll do fine." I walked into that interview, and when he asked me, "How long do you think you'll work here?" I responded, "Until something better comes along." Story 5. I talked my way into a job at a software company when they put a hiring notice in a local paper. I had no idea what the software did. I still don't. They hired me as a trainer, and no one ever explained what the product was. I did a few weeks where I was trained on the software, but literally none of it ever made sense to me. It was like they were speaking gibberish. One day I showed up, a lady I had never seen before gave me a check and walked me out to the parking lot. No one even ever said, "You're fired," or anything. It's one of the strangest things that ever happened to me. Story 6. Earlier this year, I was hospitalized for a full work week for a miscarriage that had a lot of complications. My direct boss, a woman, was completely empathetic, and even though I'm a one-person team, she encouraged me to take off all the time that I needed. So, I did, and took an extra week off after being released from the hospital to just process some things and physically recover. I'd needed blood transfusions and multiple surgeries beyond just a D&C also. Couldn't walk around much and had almost no energy for anything except sleep. Anyway, About a month later, revenue reports came in for the previous month, and there was a massive drop in revenue for my team, correlating directly with the period I was hospitalized and in recovery. While I was out, no one at work covered for me, so that work just didn't get done, and it led to a big $0 for most of the month. My boss's boss, a man, then sent an angry, accusatory email to me with my direct boss CC'd. They demanded to know why my team had done so poorly for the previous month, and what I was going to do to step it up and make sure it never happened again, because whatever mistake I had made was completely unacceptable. Corporate America at its absolute finest. Story 7. My parole officer wanted to make sure I actually had a job, so he went to my employer listed on my file to surprise visit me on the job. I did home wiring, so I worked at different job sites and rarely in the office. He called me to say he was going to charge me with a violation for lying to him about my whereabouts. This could have landed me back in prison for my remaining 10.5 years sentence. The owner of the company had to speak with him and vouch for me. My parole office didn't charge me, but the owner sure did fire me that day. Finding a job with a felony isn't an easy thing, and it wasn't long before my PO threatened to charge me with a violation if I didn't find a job soon. Story 8. I refused to come in 15 to 20 mins early unpaid for my shift. I was always 5 to 10 mins early, but they decided they wanted me there earlier. I carried on as normal, as I'm not coming in if I'm not being paid. Turned up for a 12 p.m. shift at 11:49. No one would look at me when I arrived, then was thrown in a meeting and fired for being late. Was out the door before it even hit 12. It was the only time I've ever been fired.